The name Peckham Boys once sent shockwaves across London and the UK. Mention it in the 2000s, and people instantly thought of chaos, street wars, machete attacks, stolen bikes, and lives cut short in the heart of South London. They were one of the most feared gangs in Britain, known for violence, retaliation, and a long-standing feud with their rivals from Brixton. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines. Politicians blamed the breakdown of society, and communities lived in fear. But then the headlines faded. The stabbings stopped making front-page news. The gang name was not spoken as loudly, and the outside world moved on. But what happened to the Peckham Boys? Did they disappear, or did they evolve? To truly understand their story, you have to go back to the roots of the gang and the streets they called home. Peckham, a district in South London, is now often associated with hip cafes, gentrification, and art galleries. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, it was a very different place. Poverty, unemployment, and broken homes were the norm. Young people growing up in housing estates like North Peckham or Gloucester Grove faced constant pressure from police from rival gangs and from the environment around them. The Peckham Boys were not one single unit. They were an umbrella group of loosely connected sets, including the younger Peckham Boys, YPB, SN1s, Spare No One, and later the South Soldiers and Shoot Instant. Each had its own leadership, rules, and reputation. What united them was loyalty to the postcode and a shared enemy, the gangs from Brixton, mainly the Gas Gang and the PDC's Peel Dem crew. At the heart of it all was a postcode war. These were not battles over millions in drug money or international crime rings. These were wars over respect, territory, and revenge. Someone gets robbed, the retaliation follows. Someone gets stabbed, and another stabbing answers back. And so it goes on. The cycle of violence fed itself. By the mid-2000s, the gang culture in London hit a boiling point. Knife crime skyrocketed. Videos of youths brawling in broad daylight flooded YouTube. Drill music became the soundtrack of the streets, raw, aggressive, and unfiltered. And the Peckham Boys became infamous not just in South London but across the country. They were portrayed as monsters by the media, hunted by the police, and idolized by kids who saw no other way to survive. One of the most tragic events in this bloody timeline was the murder of 16-year-old Kajo Yengan Hammersmith in 2007. Although not directly tied to the core Peckham gang, it reflected the growing spread of gang influence from postcode to postcode, school to school. Kajo was chased down and stabbed by a group of teenagers allegedly linked to the wider gang culture. His death sent a chilling message. The violence was not limited to Peckham or Brixton anymore. It was spreading everywhere. Another flashpoint came in 2010 with the murder of Sylvester Capellara, a 17-year-old athlete and promising sprinter who was shot in the neck. He was not a known gang member, but his killers associated with the Brixton-based Gas Gang mistook him for a rival. That kind of mistake was deadly and far too common. In response to the growing violence, the Metropolitan Police launched multiple operations targeting the Peckham Boys. Raids, surveillance, and anti-gang units led to dozens of arrests. Key figures were taken off the streets. Community leaders, youth workers, and ex-gang members began working together to reduce the bloodshed. For a while, it seemed to be working, but the truth is more complex. The Peckham Boys did not vanish. They changed. Some members moved on, either aging out or leaving the life behind. Others rebranded, joining newer sets or creating their own. Some turned to music, using the raw pain of street life to fuel careers in the drill scene. Rappers like Giggs, who emerged from Peckham, helped put South London on the map. His crew SN1 was originally linked to the streets, but he used his voice to escape the chaos. And that is the turning point most people miss. The media stopped covering the story because the violence went underground. It did not end. It simply became less public, less visible. The new generation of gangs adapted. They learned how to move smarter. Less attention, less noise, but still involved in fraud, drug dealing, and violence. By the late 2010s, many Peckham estates had started changing. Gentrification crept in. New housing developments replaced old blocks. Art students moved into flats once occupied by struggling families. But underneath the surface, the culture remained. Peckham may look different on the outside, but many of the root issues that birthed the gang still exist. What makes the story even more tragic is how many talented young people were lost to the streets. Some wanted to be footballers, rappers, or designers. But the environment they were raised in offered little room for mistakes. One wrong turn, one wrong postcode, one wrong night, and it was over. Yet hope remains. Several former members of the Peckham Boys have dedicated their lives to change. Some now run youth centers, speak in schools, or work with at-risk kids to steer them away from gang life. They know better than anyone how easy it is to get drawn in and how hard it is to get out. The government also began funding community intervention programs, aiming to tackle gang violence through prevention rather than punishment. Projects like DIV Art, which works in police custody suites, aim to offer young people an alternative before it is too late. But the system is stretched. And for many, help arrives too late. So where are the Peckham Boys now? The name may no longer dominate headlines, but the legacy lives on. Some sets still operate quietly under new names. Others have shifted from street violence to organized fraud and cybercrime. A few have gone on to find real success, turning pain into purpose, using their past not as a weight, but as a warning. And then there are the ones who never made it, the ones whose names are only remembered in candlelit vigils and on memorial T-shirts, the ones whose stories ended before they could be told. The story of the Peckham Boys is not just a gang tale, it is a reflection of systemic failure, of what happens when society leaves entire communities behind, of what happens when there is no safety net, no guidance, and no real opportunity. It is about more than violence, it is about survival. People often ask what the solution is. How do you stop gangs from forming? How do you end the violence? The answer is never simple. It starts with listening, with seeing young people not as threats, but as individuals shaped by their environment. It starts with investment, in schools, in families, in mental health, and in community leadership. And it starts with truth. The truth is that gang violence is not random. It is predictable. It is preventable. But only if you are willing to face the uncomfortable realities behind it. There is no doubt that the Peckham Boys played a massive role in shaping London's gang history. But they were also shaped by it. They were both the product and the producers of a system that failed them. And until we understand that, we will keep repeating the same cycle. Today, Peckham is changing. The luxury flats, the organic cafes, and the art installations tell one story. But walk a few streets over, and you will still find the echoes of the past. Young boys with no father at home. Police vans are parked on the corners. Mothers praying their sons make it home each night. The headlines may have faded, but the reality has not. So the next time someone tells you the Peckham Boys are history, tell them to look closer. The story is not over. It is just not being told the same way. But it is still unfolding in the lives of those who lived it, those who escaped it, and those still trapped inside it. This has been the real story of the Peckham Boys. What happened before the headlines, what happened after, and what is still happening right now.